there we go. Which we're not able to now. Oh, fish the way here. Moving on here. Okay.
Is there a way to lock the door?
Yeah. In there. People does. But if you get worse, if people push the door, then it doesn't.
Yeah, you better. Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
For far too long, we've turned away from the reality that the politics of identity, religion, and belief has penetrated mainstream sports. We want to acknowledge that reality. We believe all forms of political expression must be allowed. This will manifest in two ways. Number one, players will not action just because of their religious and political beliefs. This means that anything that you particularly, even as for example, wearing a hijab or wearing a turban, when you're competing, all of these things will be allowed.
Yeah.
But secondly, companies also will not be allowed to take away endorsements from athletes just because of a political expression that's been made during their careers as athletes. I'll present two arguments in my speech. Firstly, the sporting arena is a political arena, and secondly, why this policy makes sports extremely accessible to a lot more people. So, to the first argument. Huge amounts of development and endorsements are made on political grounds. This happens in two ways. Number one, the NRA spends billions of dollars every year to ensure that large American flags are paraded through stadiums during important games. The performance of Beyonce during the NFL halftime show that was very much related to the expression of the Black Panther is extremely political in nature itself. The reason place in the sporting arena is because there is a high demand not only for high quality sports but also entertainment to be attached to it. And because expression is linked between these two things, that's why a place within the sporting arena is always reserved. So what does this mean in our world? It means that your political expression is fused in the sporting arena. That means athletes will be able to exhibit the things that they believe in, including their political views, not only during these games, but also as athletes of a particular team. Understand that in the world of opposition, where players are met with rowdy supporters, where players are met with racial slurs, no form of it in their world. At the very least, on our side, the comparative is you're able to defend yourself as an athlete. This gives you two benefits. Number one, it means that your expression and your political expression allows you to defend your beliefs. And if you're a foreign player playing in a foreign, you're defending the place that you come from. You're defending the local supporters that you have in your country. This is far more likely to encourage players to pick up the sport and to pick up going out and playing in big international arenas because they know that the political expressions they have and the identities that they have will not be a barrier for them to succeed in the sporting arena. The link to this is that the sporting arena is one that is extremely visible to the entire world, and that's why your political expression, even if you're an athlete, will gain a lot of traction with the rest of the world. And allowing that visibility to take place in your political expression not only means you get to defend yourself, but you get to express yourself, especially when we see a highly whitewashed sporting arena that we have today. So the conclusion to this argument is that when the coverage of media puts its light onto the sporting arena, it covers the true value and the truth of how people feel as athletes and when they express themselves in the sporting arena. But yes.
Your principle that sports and expression are intertwined is subject to just that the NFL is inconsistent in its application of that principle, allowing the Beyonce halftime show. If we don't allow that and we're not okay with any of that, you haven't told us substantially why it's intertwined.
And the reason why sports and politics is extremely intertwined is when you go in as an athlete, you're not only a sportsman, you're a person with an identity, you're a person with a religion. These things, when you're an athlete, means that your value, not only as a player, but your value as a representative of the community is viewed in a very high and important way. The reason this is viewed in a very important way is because people buy tickets to see the athletes that they really love. People buy jerseys and buy merchandise of athletes they believe truly represent them, and that's what politics is intertwined. Why do we think this policy makes sports a lot more accessible? Because the identity of religion and politics has been muddled in, the identity of religion has been muddled into the dirt of politics. And this wasn't done because it was strategic, but it was done because of convenience. And one example of this is when was pulled in and now labeled as a tool of oppression, even though large amounts of women find this to be an empowering tool. And even if that political expression was never intended to be, but the authority and the way you control that discussion mattered to a lot of Muslim women, because when they participate in sports, they're prevented from putting these on and prevented by the hijab. So the expression allows you with different lifestyles and allows you to career in sports as well. That is part of you as well. And just because you do not fit into the perfect stereotype of what an athlete looks like, that does not mean you should hinder yourself from not opting into what we likely to target athletes that are now more likely to be open to allowing their children to participate in sports, because they know that just because they look different, that just because they have a beard, just because they have a turban, they will no longer be prevented from participating and being discriminated in these sports. But even if that was true, you think this here is to make sure religion does not become insular and that they are more likely to integrate with mainstream sports. And this is particularly important because in reality, politics is often controlled by the dominant race. For example, the Washington Redskins logo is controlled by millions of individuals who are white, and that means a lot of Native Americans are unable to have control over the way that logos are perceived to them. This means, in comparative on our side, when a lot more Native Americans now express their political views and express their religious views, you're going to have a lot more minority players opting into the sporting arena, opting into wanting to control the way they perceive this for themselves. And given the visibility of the sporting arena, at the very least on our side, we give that visibility to these individuals. Why do we then think that the politics of minorities, what does this mean for them? Not only does it create a more inclusive platform within sport, but it also means individual space will less likely be tolerated. Why? Our consumers have who they want to support and who they want to invest in. Because in the world of opposition, you never know that you're buying a jersey that is made by an extremely bigoted owner of a football club. You never know that you're buying tickets of players that are extremely racist. But when a chance to find out what this means for you, that means you can also align your political views and you can align the way you choose to support a certain club. You're more likely to align yourself with a club that represents your best political views. And that's the conclusion to our side, because we make sure the secret bigot in their work is revealed on our side.
Since it is the Good Friday weekend, I'm going to suggest this. There's a time to love and a time to weep, a time for joy and a time for peace. Speaking out your views is not the same as getting people to listen to them, and it's not the same as getting them to do what you want. The environment is sport. In an arena where the sweltering heat of defeat causes anger to surge like blood boils in your veins, when people are often split along very nationalistic lines, I assure you, they are not in the mood to listen to whatever you have to say. Is that this policy, while well-intentioned, one, won't work, and number two, will undermine the ability of sport to bring peace to discourse in general, therefore having effects virtually outside the realm of politics. What do we support as an opposition? We support like banning overall, like what myths in is POI, convenience saves me time, but also we are think that people are very happy and free doing political statements outside of their game if their contract is okay with it. We obviously can't believe that personal and the political can be divided on Shush, I'm not even done yet. We also think that we're also happy to ban racial slurs on the grounds of discriminatory conduct. That's okay in equal protection laws, it's something standard in the status quo. So this is not half of this case where it talks about how we need to protect people instead. We just don't allow them to express such ugly sentiments. and that's okay. However, what they haven't proven of government is that after politicization of all their expressions to the minority group, minority bear in mind, having leverage over the discourse to change things, none of that was actually proven in their case. Until they do, they don't have a functional positive matter. I talk about two arguments: the value of neutrality in sport and why it should be a neutral space, and number two, how this worsens the relationship between minorities and various stakeholders, whereas a policy of passive. Our first rebuttals that don't quite fit. The first thing they say is that media coverage should shine a spotlight on this attention. Like, have you ever seen how Fox News reacted to Colin Kaepernick's protest? The trouble with the very worst parts of the protest, they focus on the kind of reactions and they blow it up and they normalize it to show Colin as a minority. If you want to protest, you don't want to preach to the choir, you want to reach out to the people watching Fox News. I assure you the media is not going to take very kindly to this. Secondly, the other argument is that in politics, fundamentally intertwined and we should not allow these to be separated. But we do take issue with that. People can separate their personal and professional all the time. It's called work and life balance. Sports is about coming together despite the differences. You may be of a certain race or hold certain political views in sport. We agree to put that aside because at that point in context, we value certain things as partially more important. Tickets not to see who you are as a person, but how good you are in playing the game.
Yeah.
Which is why there's a huge uproar when comedians like Kate Blanchett make statements about Black Lives Matter in the Oscars with the exact opposite effect. Viewers tell her, stick to being an entertainer. So even if she wanted to get a protest out, nothing actually changes. She doesn't solve anything. Then they argue that religion shouldn't become insular, like, look, discourse normalizing religious sentiments in the rest of society. You need to provide sports, particularly the only unique medium by which we can do this. What I'm going to do right now, my substantive, later on maybe after the first one, is to show how sport particularly needs to be kept neutral vis-a-vis other arenas of public life. First substantive argument, value neutrality in sport. Well, frankly, humans, nations fight a lot. It seems to be human nature. What sport does, since it solved the first AGM war in, like, I forget something easy, is it enshrines civil behavior. It enshrines a commitment to understanding the other and putting aside differences. This is why when they go to the Olympics, nations which are at war go on truces. There's a time and space in society to resolve political issues, but sports' unique focus as a model is to recognize common humanity and bring people together on an effective level, focusing on the celebration of the human spirit and promoting the ability among people to even if you hold different views from the art and parcel of engagement. You can't just always have confrontation with discourse all the time. There needs to be a celebration at the effective emotional level of what makes us human.
Okay, if you want to normalize racial sentiments in order to be a part of your team, what type of team is going to pull in a Native American to be a part of that if they know they always be subjected by racist comments on your side?
If a team knows that the Native American guy, on the team is going to protest every time they are there, they probably won't feel the Native American in the very first place.
Yeah.
The problem in these situations is that if you normalize this kind of behavior, corporations often don't take the risk. They are just need to discuss altogether. So I will talk a lot more about that. But the thing is this, political expression by players such as Colin Kaepernick's protest, the Black Power salute, South Korea sitting down when North Korea enters the stadium, all these things throw the power of sport to unite people out of the window. Humanize people by celebrating the common human spirit. These divisions in this particular context dehumanize the protesters, which is why people threw rotten cabbages at Colin Kaepernick. The NCAA doesn't want to draft him. So this protest didn't actually change anything for him. It made his fortunes worse, and now he solidified the image of black people as being uncompromising and not willing to listen at all. That's what this does. Worse for stakeholders, which is my second point of substantive. Let's talk about the players versus the stakeholder. Unfortunately, there's a heavy intersection of sport with social class. Most sporting players tend to come from working class backgrounds with slightly lower degrees of education than the medium. We're not saying this is completely true, but it tends to be the case. Unfortunately, these protests along racial, nativist, and religious lines often confirm and mutually reinforce the very worst expressions of this sentiment, even if the protester himself or herself didn't intend for it to be that way. The trouble is, sport is competition, and when you go up tutoring your sentiment of racial or religious hatred, it often demands a response in kind, and this will feed into very pre-existing latent biases among the players themselves, which is why precisely sporting cultures are still grappling with homophobia to this day. Shouting about it in public doesn't make a difference, but when in audiences, and this is the critical part where this debate turns, if you're trying to win over people, the larger body politic who will make change in society, the last thing you want to do is to have the audience watching Colin Kaepernick to tar everyone with the same brush, to see the All Blacks as in All Blacks, not the All Blacks, as the enemy. That's the problem. It is very hard to expect that black kids will want to join up the moment they saw the reaction to how Colin protested, because it just isn't safe. What we see on our side is that a process of normalization is much more critical for a few reasons. As people slowly get accustomed to seeing the player on the field, as they form their fan clubs, as a person becomes excellent in the fields that people recognize are good, he becomes a national hero. This is critical influence. Feeling pride and feeling love for this icon is the first step to construct a willingness to associate with them in the long run. So you can be an excellent sports person, you can show the field, but you don't have to protest about it. You'll still get your way in the long run by playing with the rules of the game.
We think often the fights that we need to take are difficult because we are silenced by the drowning voices and screams of the majority. Everywhere you look, 1 in 13 of the people that die in the United States is caused by a Muslim person. But the portrayal of a Muslim identity in media is overwhelmingly disproportionate against these minorities. That means the face that a common person associates a Muslim person to is often terrorism. What other avenue do you really have in order for you to combat that and change that perception? That will be my argument in substantive. But before I get to that, I have a number of rebuttals to the speaker before me. Before I go into the thematic rebuttals that I have, I just have one thing that I have to point out. So if you listen very closely to the model that they support, they also say individuals that have their contracts allow them to be politically expressive outside of the game, they would allow them to do so. So I think that's a pretty interesting position to take Nepal. We think that's harmful though, and it's pretty damaging for a number of reasons. The first is, if you take the example that Lucas used specifically in regards to how the media can really manipulate the narrative surrounding your expression. If the media can really take hold and monopolize how people view you, then the only kinds of expression you would have on their side when they express out of these matters, when very little of the masses can view you, is only available to the people, like you say, Fox Media. So your expression that you would allow outside of matters is limited to the people that need to listen to those matters, but rather will be monopolized and manipulated. So your model is soft and even more damaging to your side. Let's go into my thematic rebuttal. So first, why is the sporting world integrated and intertwined with politics? Because the PY that he asked is, well, if we ban Beyonce's performance, what really is your evidence? And Dave gave you specifically a couple. The first is that he told you that if this works as a platform that is powerful and creates high levels of accessibility when no other platform, such as speaking to your politician, fighting against lobby groups, all these platforms have significantly failed you, this becomes the intertwining factor that relates your identity to your message and your journey. We think that's one reason. The second thing is, we think it's difficult to regulate, because if you listen very closely, they can, I suppose in principle, they would also ban the singing of your national anthem if it's like Israel, Palestine, or along those lines, right? But the difference is, what you cannot mitigate is the loud singing and celebrations that we broadcast when you go back home, when you win the most amount of medals, when there's a direct comparative when it comes to diplomacy. These are things that you cannot mitigate on your side. So the point that I'm trying to make is, as much as you try to mitigate the levels of nationalism and identity, it is very difficult for you to control when it is celebrated at that extent. Have a seat. The second point I would make is, can you really opt out? And this is where I think Lucas largely spent a couple of minutes for no point, right? So we think it's possible that some people will be able to opt out. We question which kinds of athletes are able to opt out of these politics. We think it's harder for minority individuals to opt out of it being part of their lives. But more importantly, even if they can, they shouldn't. And I think that's the point, because a lot of people can opt out of misery and their suffering, and a vast amount of people cannot. And we think we have to speak and listen to the voices that cannot. And we point to the example of, he said there's no reason, there's no point. Colin Kaepernick got cabbages thrown at him. What is the difference that you saw? The difference is you cannot compare this model to the status quo. The model must be compared with the model. What does this mean? This means that if a lot more African Americans were able to kneel with Colin Kaepernick, then there will be a lot more collective power and no one will be sanctioned for it. Those cabbages will be thrown back, ladies and gentlemen, and that's what we want from side proposition. This is why it's particularly important for Colin and for Lucas to respond very strongly to the material they gave you. That in a world where there are racist chants to like Jewish Manchester United players, I think when they came to Malaysia, there's very little that players like this can do to defend themselves, because the moment they try to defend themselves, they are seen as politically expressing themselves. And we think that's particularly problematic. Have a seat. The last thing I'll say is, if you allow this to continue and you allow some groups of people to express themselves and become national heroes, can we wait? Is the trade-off worth it? I think it's possibly true that if we give people enough time, that some individuals will end up becoming national heroes. But at what cost and to what purpose? At the point in which he becomes a national hero and then starts propagating, he will be outdated, he will no longer be relevant. How many of you still remember the great vestiges and objectives of like Mokhtar Dahari, right? Very little people do and very people can relate. So the time is important. The second bit is also that he will be complicit at the point that he gained all the wealth and all the popularity at the expense of speaking up to the people he's supposed to defend. He lost that fight. Sure.
To what extent do you think Colin Kaepernick represents the views of all blacks?
So are you saying he does and therefore will be ostracized for it? Do white people hate him for that? Or are you saying he does not represent the cause and therefore is irrelevant to the African American community? You have to pick a side, bro. What is my substandard? Firstly, why this allows individuals to speak out against the voices on the side? Currently, the most dominant narrative, and I already told you this in my opening line, is skewed against individuals of the dominant communities. What does this mean? Like a very strong example is like the singing of the national anthem, right? Why it's very hard for people to disassociate, and this directly links to my rebuttal for Lucas earlier as well. When you sing the national anthem and your disobedience of that fact is not just seen as you protesting against the national anthem, you're protesting against a white majority, but it's also seen as a betrayal to the nation. So African American communities also themselves associate that action as being wrong. The point that I'm trying to make here is it's a lot harder for some individuals to speak for their communities than others. But what happens when you allow individuals to associate icons and images of positive attributes to these individuals? This means there's one more image, one more voice, one more personality that becomes harder for people to deny. Your national hero that you say exists will become harder to respond to. There will be a direct comparative. Is it really true that a vast amount of Middle Eastern men are often geared more towards violence? Is it true the young African Americans only do certain things and only involve themselves in gangs and not maybe really popular like basketball careers? The problem is you disallow them to advocate for that. That means the association that you have to the identity, it cannot be rebutted, right? And that's problematic because all the other things that make it worse, that empowers the image and the media, will still exist under their side, and they cannot regulate it because it's out of the frame of the sporting industry. We are proud to say we give a voice to the silence. Thank you.
I think so.
Yellow.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think we've allowed government bench to get away with the most generous and most convenient characterization of the kind of political expressions you're likely going to see in these particular sporting events. When Lucas came up here and told you a characterization of who are the people who are most likely going to be viewing sports, engaging in sports, as well as the people who are the most die-hard fans, the people who are middle class, either not all, but certainly the vast majority, undereducated in comparison to the vast majority of people who are more progressive in nature. We're also talking about characterization that was far more likely to spot the vitriolic, xenophobic, as well as the exclusionary sentiments and political expressions that existed on your side of the house. That's why you could not rely on this super convenient characterization. The minorities could say what they want, but apparently would have no pushback. Everyone would support them. Fans would not get on their back, ladies and gentlemen, and xenophobes would not say the direct opposite and get more support at the end of the day. You couldn't just argue that minorities could say something. You had to prove that the vast majority of people will buy into minority protection rather than the vitriolic, xenophobic sentiments that we said you were more likely to on your side of the house. We think that was exceptionally important. But a few rebuttals before I go into my 3 pieces of substantive. The 3 things I'll talk about is first, how you systematically incentivize the exclusion of minorities from being part of national identity, story, and fabric. Secondly, even if they are included, you disable the broader public from having an honest appreciation of their athletic capabilities. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, lastly, harming Sion's last argument, the creation of those heroes, idols, and the agents of change that you want on their side of the house. But a few things to rebut. The first thing to note, ladies and gentlemen, that we think is incredibly important is that they assume that if a lot more people knelt down with Colin Kaepernick, they'll be able to throw cabbages back. But fundamentally, all the analysis Lucas talked about was still standing at the start of this debate. But secondly, ladies and gentlemen, that this model where you say, in order to combat cabbages being thrown or Malaysian fans being anti-Semitic towards a Chelsea player, ladies and gentlemen, doesn't tell you that one political expression was not legitimate. It only says that both are legitimate, ladies and gentlemen. The reason why that's horrible is because you legitimize their anti-Semitism on your side as well. Here, I really don't understand why you think that's okay. As opposed to our side, ladies and gentlemen, where neither political expression is valid, it's a lot more likely for you to be able to say that anti-Semitism is not okay under our side of the house. We think that's a preferable option as opposed to legitimizing people who are horrible people and saying that you can keep throwing cabbages as long as players throw cabbages back. We don't think that's a sustainable model in terms of creating the unity and trust that a sporting arena is meant to achieve. But secondly, ladies and gentlemen, they also assume that people who are on the same team like Colin Kaepernick want to kneel down and protect Colin Kaepernick in that particular circumstance. When Lucas will also argue it's unfair to be able to tar with the same brush the entire team and foist upon them the political and moral burdens of one particular player. Not everyone. And the reason why you shouldn't have just answered a question when Lucas asked you that, Siron, is that if Colin Kaepernick does not represent the political views of all the players and not all the blacks, it's certainly unfair that all players be shoved with the burden of having to be defended of every single person on that team, being thrown cabbages on and having anti-Semitic comments being thrown against those people as well. Why is that fair in a sporting arena where each individual, especially in the 21st century, where teams are diverse, people come from all over the place, ladies and gentlemen, and people fundamentally don't have to defend those views as well on your side of the house. We think that's a moral harm that they haven't answered on that side of the house. But secondly, ladies and gentlemen, he told us that if we say that you can have political expression outside, that's a concession and soft apparently. No, that's most of the time, every other circumstance that exists under the status quo, like work and things like that, you sign contracts whether they allow you or not. But obviously, what we're also talking about, even though we can't control the things that happen outside the arena, obviously this debate is about the gradient of harm that's created in this particular circumstance. All the things that Lucas talked about in terms of the intense blood boiling, the kind of heated environments that sporting arenas create when you're packed together, the kind of riots that typically happen when you watch a Kelantan match, right? Oftentimes, those are kind of environments where individuals tend to get violent, tend to get aggressive, aren't able to lose, blame the other person, and fundamentally create all the harms that we think are incredibly important, ladies and gentlemen. Not to mention, especially when you have the kind of communities, they assume that's going to be incredibly inclusive and not going to be aggressive. But what if an individual comes in bearing the sign of Nazi Germany or the KKK? What kind of overt reactions are going to be created and the violent reactions are going to be created? We don't think you achieve the kind of things that you want on your side of the house. But the last thing, Asia, the media portrayal is exceptionally important here because we think it was misunderstood on that side of the house. At the point at which you have the confusion and the lack of moral distinction in a riot, ladies and gentlemen, where Black Lives Matter fight against Nazis, and at the same time, people who are alt-right are all waving their political flags and everyone's fighting against each other, it's hard to draw the moral distinction. And finally, it's lost in the media spectrum, and the people can pick off those images easier on your side of the house. Yes, sir.
So, explain this to me. In a world where all these hatred currently exist and they permeate, why wouldn't like alternative medias like MSNBC pick up the alternative view on that?
I agree. But that happens on your side as well. The thing here is the specific context is that both sides don't get to express anything, and therefore the harms are created and amplified on the outside. You just have to respond to that, Sarah, not just repeat unsubstantiated argument. First thing, how you systematically incentivize the exclusion of minorities from being part of national identity. Considering, ladies and gentlemen, that in a lot of circumstances, that the political expressions of one player can become an immense risk towards the state that you represent. For example, in the Olympics, right? We're also talking about, for example, whether the Iraqi government allows Kurds to represent the Kurds to represent Iraq in the Olympics, or whether Black Africans were allowed to play with the Springboks with white Afrikaners. Things like Chinese government allowing the Uyghurs to be able to play, because every time you put them on the field, you're afraid that they're going to be a political statement. That's incredibly harmful, ladies and gentlemen, because you erase them from the national fabric and identity and make them popular. But secondly, even if you put them there, you disable the broader public from having an honest appreciation of their talents. This is incredibly important because every single time they're doing something good, you call them a cheat, a scam. They pay off the rep. Viewers riot every time they win, ladies and gentlemen, because they think that their achievements are viewed through the lens of their political landscapes and therefore unable to have an honest appreciation of them. The reason why this is important is because all the creation of heroes and idols that you want on your side of the house and the agents of change can only happen at the point at which these minority groups who already face prejudice, ladies and gentlemen, can be viewed through the vast majority who are prejudiced by an honest appreciation of their talents and be able to associate them, find them their national heroes, think that they are part of your national fabric, and only then can you change your political views according to that. We walk through the steps of how you actually get the change on the outside of the house, even though it's not ideal. This isn't the only avenue. You can have other avenues, but finally this one has been a united space where individuals feel free to practice what they believe. Thank you.
When an individual admires a sports person, they don't just admire the amount of goals that they make or the amount of aces that they serve in. They also admire the political bravery of that person. They admire the religion and the beliefs that this sports person takes a stand in. When you take away the ability for you to express political or religious views, you take a huge chunk of what the sports industry has become. In my speech today, I will answer one question. Why is sports, in particular, an important medium for political and religious views? But before I move on, I would have three main rebuttals to the previous speaker. First, they want to talk about how political expressions are harmful, and they forced us to defend this. I think in Deb and Saran's speech, they defended this pretty well. But yes, while we agree that certain people are racist and maybe they're xenophobic and their political views say so, we think that Deb and Saran explain to you how that these people will react. And how will they react? That number one, they will no longer support a racist bigot. If someone has been secretly supporting someone who did not believe in their political view or someone who was against their religion. But number two, we think that people who are maybe good and had very good political views and religious views can now get the love and support from these group of people, right? As a result of our policy, we think that people who are outwardly bigots and racist people, these are the kind of people that people will shun away or will not support any longer. But under our will, people who are good and have good political views or like religious relatability, these are kind of people where audience and views and supporters can opt their love and support into. The legitimization of political views. And they said that if you legitimize one political view, that's a bad thing. We do not understand why you believe that there are certain views out there that are not legitimate or something that they should never be supported. I think this is very shameful. We think that all views all around is something that deserves some form of respect or some form of legitimization, right? And we think that even if so, we think that the comparative is this. Under our world, all views, good and bad, is legitimized. Compared to theirs, where there will be very little views and very little political and religious views that would be legitimized. This is still better than having so little airtime to these certain political views, right? But then we think that they help us to respond to the fact that they are also okay with anti-Semitic views, right? Because it's just not on the match or just not in competition. Because they conceded to the fact that even without these sports people are allowed to go outside and sport. We think that if you are attached to a political or religious view and then you are present in a context, it's already a political expression in itself when you are so attached to a certain ideal. But thirdly, take a seat. Thirdly, how do you talk about how protests and riots they happen in our status quo? We think that under their world, under our world, these riots and protests are skewed towards dominant races or dominant ideals, right? Things that are maybe racist or more whitewashed than most. So if you lift that and allow people to politically express, this is the only way that people can fight back, can tell you that this is wrong, or they express their own political or religious views when you told them how these people are not racist or are not bad people. So the point is, under our world, while maybe these in status quo, if riots and protests happen, at least under our world and with our policy, people have the ability to fight back. This is an ability that they will never be able to grant these group of people. They also want to say that they also want to say how the point to fight is in order to win. And we find this very shameful because every time you do not fight back, you let the opposing team win even more. Every time you do not fight back, you concede to the fact that maybe African Americans are less better than a white person, or maybe Native Americans do not deserve a place in that American team. We think that each time you fight back, even if you lose in the long run, it still means that you took a stand, and it means that the other group of person did not win as much. Before that, go on.
We punish teams for anti-Semitic fans, we ban fans from ever participating again. It's not as if we're not taking any stance against people, we're telling them anti-Semitism is wrong. But why create an environment where everyone is hyper-politicized in a hyper-aggressive environment?
Because what's unique to us is that people can still fight back in that sporting arena. This is an ability that only happens under our side. They have to concede to the fact that outside of these matches, these people are still strong political advocates. The difference is they're just outside, right? The moment that they're inside a field or inside a tennis court, this is when their presence is already a political expression in itself. My first question: is there an important medium for political and religious views? Because first they want to say that sports only medium for talent and people watch it to see performances of people. First of all, I don't compared to their one-liner compared to their analysis as to why sports is already infused with politics, right? A lot of sporting aspects like your venues and your players and your teams is already very politically dependent. People already see the sporting arena as one that is also a political arena. People often vote or support players because of personal or religious or political views, right? And vice versa. People will also hate certain groups of people if they oppose them, right? Considering that sports is a huge industry, sports channels are literally one of the most watched channels in the world, or sports is something that people wait months for to watch, the World Cup or something. This is when something as worldwide and famous and inclusive as the sports industry, this is when the sports industry should be also an environment for political bravery or expression. The difference in the distinct factor as to why sports should also be a medium is because it has a very unique worldwide audience as compared to everyone else. It also has a narrative where you're also united, or you have this unity. As a result of that, we should allow all political expressions, because not allowing them means that you're not united, that you will only allow certain groups of things. This is when you go against the very principle of what the Olympics is, or what the sports industry. What have we told you today? We have told you three main things. Number one, when you allow political expression, while they might be more discourse or more arguments or more riots or a more tense environment, the unique benefit that we get is that people can fight back. And considering that the sports industry in itself is something that is worldwide, that has a lot of audience, this is when people are more likely to express their reasons as to why Native Americans should be part of a football team, or why African African Americans do not get enough representation. We also tell you how political expressions in itself is already part of the sports industry. It's something that simply cannot be divorced. That's already something that people have already accepted and cannot be divorced. As a result of that, the arena and the sports arena should also be a political, environment for people to stay in. I'm very, very proud to propose.
Two very quick clarifications. First, just because they keep on repeating that sport is currently infused with a lot of politics, opposition has to support that policy in this debate. The second is that they're actually quite extreme in what they understand by political expression. I think slightly insidiously trying to insert that we have to support banning the hijab, for example.
Yeah.
Hijab, not me. A Muslim woman wearing hijab is not a political expression. So I think let's debate on more reasonable things because it's my religion. Three things. First, who gets more minority inclusion? That's changed, assuming they are able to actually have access for minorities to begin with. Third, on a principle basis, even if they win all those clashes, they'll still participate. So I think the first thing, just clarifying, right? The unique thing in this case apparently is that people can fight back. The unique thing in our case is that they don't have to because we ban people throwing bananas at you.
On that point,
Because we ban anti-Semitic comments, we punish clubs and their fans very heavily. It's absolutely shatteringly tragic that you would use these players as your battering rams to get racially abused, to get anti-Semitic abuse, so they can fight back for a hypothetical and speculative benefit that you think will accrue to you. Have that inclusion under your. First of all, you do start a bloodbath that didn't exist before. Because even if the working class population explicit bans on these kinds of political expressions when it didn't become a dominant narrative of discussion between team players, it didn't become a dominant narrative of discussion in sports. So the point at which you are saying that black people should stand up for their rights, it's also when a lot of people who have anti-BLM movement mentality are also expressing that. And I think we give a lot of good analysis why that's likely to happen. In fact, that's more likely to happen in a world where these kind of working class populations are more likely to be susceptible to nativist kind of politics. Note that we don't have to prove that it's even overcrowded. The point at which both of those narratives exist to a certain extent is already a reason for a minority to not want to play, because that's already a very scary place to join in. That was, and by the way, this is the most privileged minority that they want to talk about. The minority we talked about, absolutely no response, was the most oppressive governments that absolutely hate those minorities are the ones who won't even make it to the team, because now there is a risk that they will protest against us. They will dissent, that they will talk about it. We are talking about Kurds in Iraq. We are talking about like Chinese not allowing Uyghurs, right? These are the kinds of communities who absolutely never make it to national teams and can ever represent the countries that they want to represent because of a risk that they will go ahead and dissent. And I think that's how you exclude minorities out of the game in absolute totality, and I think that's an absolute tragic thing to happen. Sure.
The opposition's assumption is that doing nothing doesn't ignite the fire. For every single one game that you had an opportunity to speak for your brothers back home and you did not, is one more child that will be disappointed that you did nothing when he continued to face systematic racism.
Two things. That's A, reliant on you proving that person had access to be represented in that situation. We just told you why the most vulnerable people don't. Second, that's also very simplistic and doesn't take into account all of the analysis why we showed you why our approach works better. So why is it that our approach works better? Now let's smoothly move on to that issue. So assuming that none of this is true, that the Black Lives doesn't create an exclusive culture where minorities don't want to join, that apparently a lot of these oppressive governments will still allow Iraqis, Iraqi Kurds to join, let's assume that they get in. Pick up for our brothers, and that's great, right?
But the problem is that you're most likely to get crowded out, and the narrative you can't want to have is going to not be one you control. You are likely in that particular culture where people are more likely to be susceptible to nativist politics. You are not the ones who will be able to control the narrative. You speaking will not create positive arguments for you, it will create negative arguments for you. That means you actually create those stereotypes of stupid minorities who don't know how to represent themselves. In fact, that creates worse outcome. But what is the alternative that we gave? Let's create a hero first, because you don't need to have political expressions often to further your community. And I think that was very important. What was necessary, for example, was Mutai Muralitharan, a Tamil person, to represent Sri Lanka in the cricket team, for the Tamil community to get massive amounts of respect because you attach heroism to that person. Why doesn't that occur under their work? It doesn't occur because you don't evaluate that person's performances through an objective metric, because he's already tainted by his political expressions. And that means you don't go ahead and embrace a minority person as a hero that you can relate to. And that's the difference, I think, that we brought to this debate. And that's why the point at which these people are not politically expressive, they had more capital to be able to change their sentiments around the communities they represented, and had more ability to make those communities feel represented. And I think this happened to a large extent in a lot of communities. For what was the community? I think it was Maoris in New Zealand, for example, through sports through rugby have been able to be embraced within the mainstream culture because of the way they represent themselves, right? And I think that only happens as a result of you not being so dismissive of people, or not being so expressive within sports itself. But assume we won none of those issues. Why will we still win this debate? Because of the principle that we talked about, that literally throughout the constructive speeches we had zero responses to. The first was unity. Why was this important? Because if you think of the way in which the Springboks united a very divided South Africa when it won the Rugby World Cup, can you imagine if a single white rugby player, or even a black rugby player, had made a political expression about the divisions that existed within their country, how that would have stopped the unity that occurred in South Africa around the national team that occurred? Can you imagine India and Pakistan players making political expressions rather than using sports as a form of unity and talking about how humanity can move beyond the divisions of politics? I think that was important because sports plays a part in the unity that we can prove to ourselves that we can move beyond the politics and people from different backgrounds can come together and be gentlemen or women. The second one was it was absolutely atrociously unfair that one player could misrepresent and represent other team members in the club, and those clubs and other team members had to continuously be harassed and had to defend the actions of their fellow team players. Another principle that we talked about, absolutely no response. I think at this point, just by the mere fact that they choose not to respond and just debate on a vacuum, we've already won this debate. Sorry.
Ladies and gentlemen, post-apartheid, around South Africa, the country engaged with political discussions regarding apartheid, racism, endemic discrimination that African Americans face, the aggressive confrontational resolution that was happening between the white and black South Africans. It happened everywhere. It permeated every piece of public life. That individuals in society just wanted a piece of respite, be able to find a place in society where we could just stop fighting for one man. It was then that people found that rugby was that place. That the Springboks was a beacon of unity for individuals to be able to say, that black South African, that's my guy too. That white South Afrikaner, that was my guy as well. And it was that in that moment of beauty, ladies and gentlemen, the individuals were able to look past all the aggressive, confrontational discussions that happened all throughout their lives to be able to find one moment of peace and find brotherhood or sisterhood in that neighborhood, ladies and gentlemen. And it is those specific instances that we want sports to represent. And we didn't want some expressions to happen. We wanted none of those things to happen so that people's true value as human beings, without being viewed and evaluated through the lens of your political prejudices and biases, to come in the way of you being able to view a person that comes from that minority race, sexuality, or religion, ladies and gentlemen, as a hero that was part of you and you were able to associate with under our eyebrows. We had no response on the government bench as to why we were able to achieve the same thing. And at that side, we created an aggressive confrontational system in a place where your blood boiled, an aggressive situation where people were pit against one another and someone had to lose when you represented your interests, ladies and gentlemen. The government bench relied on several presumptions that they never proved in this debate. That case was relying upon minorities wanting to participate after we told you that in an instance where vast majority of individuals, once the KKK came out, anti-BLM individuals came out, people who would harass minorities would come out, anti-Semites be legitimized in their expression because now all you have to do is throw a cabbage back, and that means the anti-Semite was okay in throwing a cabbage in the first place, ladies and gentlemen. That was an instance where minorities wouldn't even come out in the first place. But secondly, the case was also reliant on a discourse that wins out from, that ends up being a benevolent discourse for these particular minorities, ladies and gentlemen. Because nowhere in the government bench did they ever counter-characterize or give us a response as to the groups of people that were likely attending these particular sporting events, the groups of individuals who are middle class, lowly educated, and therefore likely to be subject to the nativist sentiments that we talked about, or the environment that we were talking about that was aggressive, packed close together, and therefore individuals are more likely to fight and blame one another in that particular circumstance, ladies and gentlemen. Therefore, that it was relied upon a discourse that was never going to turn out well for those minority groups. It was also relied upon minorities having control over that situation and that discourse and narrative that was created post-fact, ladies and gentlemen. Especially when we told you that when instances where there was rioting, there was fighting, and was likely, and we proved to you why it was likely, to be fighting within those sporting events, ladies and gentlemen, that there was likely not going to be a moral distinction between these particular groups, and media was going to blow it out of proportion and therefore distort your message and make you unable to be able to control that particular narrative, feeding back into all the prejudicial narratives that existed in the first place, ladies and gentlemen. That reliance on that presumption was never proven. But the last thing and the most important thing, ladies and gentlemen, is that it relied on viewers and societies that were benevolent enough to give you a chance and listen to you in the first place. Whether it be a society where your communities don't even recognize your minority group, like not allowing Uyghurs to represent your country, to not even, ladies and gentlemen, want to view you as human, ladies and gentlemen, not even want to give you the time of day to know that you were running faster, you were playing better, and you were just a better athlete. Because all you were was a cheat because you were black, that you were bribed off the referee because you were an Uyghur, that you were a Kurd, therefore you were a scammer, ladies and gentlemen. Never once they tell us why those prejudices will disappear when you put them before the evaluation of you as a person, as a minority group, ladies and gentlemen. And for those reasons, I'm exceptionally proud to oppose.
I do not for the life of me understand why this debate isn't about a woman wearing a hijab, but then can also be a debate about the Kurd in their world. It is so convenient for them to pick and choose the people they want to protect, but then accuse us of doing the very same thing. You tell a victim in the 9/11 incident and say Islam isn't politicized. You tell them that there's no value in your identity and where you exercise this identity. That is a lie in the world of opposition. What does that world look like when they attempt to make it apolitical? This means a lot more minority people will be left out of ever being able to gain a spot in a particular team, because these religious communities will never be able to wear the things that are part of them and feel comfortable when participating, because when they do that, immediately they will be labeled as a person who isn't us. This will also mean that you're continuously feeding into the ignorance, feeding into the illusion that we don't need to talk about this, because not talking about this will actually make the problem go away. Two things I will ask in this speech. Firstly, will opposition make sports apolitical or exacerbated? And secondly, will we win the fight for the protection of minorities when we ban or allow political expression? Let's look at the first issue. They said we need to be neutral. Understand that silence does not equate to neutrality. Because every time you are silent in a game where people are shouting racial slurs at you, that is when you, as an African American player, play in that game, you are complicit of the harms that are taking place. So you benefit from the organization that funds you and continues to endorse you. But now suddenly in their side, you have to become a hero and then you speak about that. That's when you've accumulated all the privileges of being a part of being an athlete, but then also complicit in the racism that befalls all these individuals. Because understand the omission of not speaking out means you lose one more person that could have stood up with you in this protest. Because the reality is on both sides, you will have empowered bigots. But what's the difference? In our side, when you stand up and you speak up, that means one more person gets to join you in that fight. And we think that in itself already is a win towards making that fight a lot more visible given the context of the sporting arena. But secondly, they said, now we want to ban it. Oh, so look at the Maoris in New Zealand when they play the haka. Every time they do that, they feel empowered by it. And that in itself is a cultural expression. When you ban it, who's going to want to join and play in the All Blacks? Which minorities are going to want to be a part of this group? But then also, they said, the reason why we ban it is because when they bring out racial slurs, we can prosecute them for it. We can take them away from stadium. Why are you waiting for the event to actually happen and then try to mitigate the harms of it? Because every time you attempt to take these protesters out of the stadiums, you don't give a defense to the players because you tell them you should just be quiet and play the game. Because me, the white, individual, racist person, I'm going to fund you and let you play the game and you have no control over that. But secondly, who would protect these minorities best? Understand that people need to be able to consent into who they are supporting and the corporations that are funding them when they play these games. This means that they are extreme racist funding sports groups like the Washington Redskins. People need to know so that they can decide not to support them or they can opt out of supporting them. That's the legitimacy that you grant to minorities when you allow political expression to take place. Otherwise, you implicitly more oppression onto them when you allow them to pay for the things that you produce and then reap off the benefits while also being oppressive and racist towards these individuals. And then the other thing that we hear is that you need to stop the fight during the game so we can feel common humanity. That's an extreme line. Because in South Africa, if the Springboks actually made a political statement about the way racial relations were today, the way racial relations were at that point, I don't think they would be in this position today. Because every time you empower the anti-Semite on your world, you don't empower the defenseless minority. You don't give them a voice to be able to fight back. At the very least, in our side, one more person joins you in understanding the position that you've taken place. So the conclusion here is that when you do it outside, when you try to do it on your own terms, you're never going to be able to do it with enough pride. At the very least, we give you more people to do it.